Let me ask you something. How many times have you felt like giving up? Like success is just too far away? Like everything you've been working for is moving at a snail's pace? You put in the hours, the energy, sacrifices, and yet that breakthrough hasn't shown up the way you imagined. And in those moments, it's easy to think, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe it's just not working. Well, but here's the truth. What if you're a lot closer than you think? What if the frustration, the resistance, the long nights, and the doubt are not signs of failure? Proof that you're on the edge of a massive breakthrough. What if the very feelings you've been interpreting as defeat are actually the clearest signals that success is right around the corner? Most people quit right before the finish line, not because they aren't capable, but because they don't recognize the signs of progress. They mistake pressure for punishment. They mistake struggle for failure. They don't realize that the storm they're in is often the final test before the sun comes out. And that's why this message is so important, because today I'm going to reveal to you 6 undeniable signs, 6 powerful clues that prove you are much closer to your success than you ever imagined. And if you stay with me, if you lean in and really listen, you're going to start seeing your own journey differently. You'll realize that everything you're going through right now isn't holding you back. It's actually carrying you forward. So, if you've ever felt like success is taking too long, if you've ever wondered whether all this struggle is worth it, then don't you dare turn away. Because the very proof that you're asking those questions, the first evidence that you're already on the path, and by the end of this, you'll see exactly why you cannot stop now. You know what the first sign is that you're closer to success than you realize. It's when you start feeling uncomfortable more often, and I don't just mean physically. I'm talking about that inner stretch, that restlessness, that sensation that life isn't as easy or predictable as it used to be. See, most people think discomfort is a bad thing. They think if they're stressed, if they're uncertain, if they're doubting themselves, it means they're moving in the wrong direction. But the truth is the exact opposite. Discomfort is proof that you're in motion. It's proof that you're no longer sitting in the same patterns you've been trapped in for years. Think about it. Nothing grows inside your comfort zone. Nothing. If you want to build strength in your body, you've got to push your muscles until they burn. If you want to master a skill, you've got to endure those hours of frustration where nothing seems to click. If you want to break through financially, emotionally, spiritually, you've got to step into situations that make you nervous, that make you sweat, that force you to do things you've never done before. That's the cost of progress. The comfort zone feels safe, but it's not where transformation happens. Discomfort is the doorway to growth. So if right now you're waking up with that knot in your stomach because you're stepping into unfamiliar territory, if you've been losing sleep because your mind is running at 1,000 miles an hour trying to figure things out, if you've been feeling this constant tension inside like life is pulling you forward, but your old self is screaming, wait, slow down, stay where it's safe, then let me tell you something, you're not failing, you're leveling up. That discomfort is the very evidence that you're on the edge of becoming more than you were yesterday. You see, people misinterpret the signals. They think fear means stop. They think anxiety means retreat. They think stress means they're doing something wrong. But what if those feelings were actually signs of expansion? What if they're your nervous system recalibrating because you're no longer living at the same level you used to? Every time you stretch beyond your comfort zone, your body and mind are forced to adapt. And in that adaptation, you're literally rewiring yourself for a new standard of living. Think about the times in your life when you grew the most. Is it when everything was easy? Was it when you had no challenges, no obstacles, no resistance? Of course not. It was when you were under pressure, when you were tested, when you had to rise to the occasion. The growth didn't come when you were comfortable. It came when you were uncomfortable, but chose to keep moving anyway. That's the real key, not avoiding discomfort, but embracing it as the fuel for transformation. Now, here's the mistake most people make. They try to numb it. They run from it. They look for distractions. They fill their lives with temporary pleasures to quiet that restless voice inside. But you can't run from it because that voice, that tension, is life calling you to rise. It's the signal that the old version of you is dying and the new version is trying to be born. And birth is never comfortable. It's messy. It's painful. It's raw. But it's the only way new life comes into existence. So, let me ask you, where in your life right now are you feeling the most uncomfortable? Where do you feel stretched thin? Where do you feel exposed? Where do you feel like you don't have all the answers? That's where the treasure lies. That's where your breakthrough is hiding. Success isn't found in the easy places. It's found in the places that scare you, the places that demand more from you than you think you can give. And I know it's tempting to interpret that discomfort as a sign you're on the wrong path. But what if it's the sign you're finally on the right one? Imagine a rocket ship breaking through the atmosphere. The moment of greatest resistance, the moment when everything shakes and rattles and feels like it's going to fall apart. That's right before it breaks free into space. That's exactly what your life feels like when you're about to break through. Everything inside you wants to quit to go back to safety, but if you keep pressing through that pressure, you'll discover a whole new world of freedom and possibility waiting for you. Discomfort also means you care. It means you're invested. People who feel nothing float through life numb and comfortable. They're not growing. They're not pushing for more. But the very fact that you feel uneasy, that you're not satisfied, that you're wrestling with doubt, that shows you actually want more for your life. That hunger combined with that tension is the spark that ignites real transformation. And here's the secret. You don't have to love the discomfort, but you do have to respect it. You have to learn to reframe it to see it not as punishment, but as preparation. Every challenge, every sleepless night, every anxious moment, every fear you face head on. It's all conditioning you for the next level. It's shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, capable than you've ever been. So instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Start asking, what is this making of me? Who am I becoming because of this strength am I building right now that I'll need for the future? That simple shift in perspective turns discomfort into your ally. Suddenly, the very thing you were running from becomes the proof that you're closer to success than you thought. Because here's the truth. You can't have growth without discomfort. You can't have transformation without tension. And you can't have success without stepping into the unknown and facing the fear that comes with it. The question isn't whether you'll feel uncomfortable. The question is, will you use that discomfort as your excuse to stop, or as your reason to keep going? So if right now you're feeling stretched, if you're feeling like life is pressing down on you, if you're questioning whether you can keep going, don't see it as the end. See it as the beginning, because that discomfort is not your enemy. It's the clearest, most powerful sign that you're closer to your breakthrough than you've ever been before. Another undeniable sign that you are closer to success than you realize is when you're failing forward, not backward. Now, let's pause on that for a moment because the world has trained us to see failure as the enemy, as the thing we must avoid at all costs. From the time we were little kids in school, the red X on the paper meant we were wrong, that we didn't measure up. Society drilled into us that mistakes equal shame, that rejection means we're not good enough, that stumbling is the same as falling behind. But the truth is very different. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's the pathway to it. Every person you've ever admired, every leader, every innovator, every high achiever you've ever studied, they all have one thing in common. They failed, not once, not twice, but over and over and over again. And yet they didn't fail backward. They didn't let their mistakes bury them. They failed forward. They used every misstep as feedback. They treated every rejection as redirection. They understood that each setback wasn't the end of the road. It was simply one more step closer to their breakthrough. See, when you're failing forward, it means you're in motion. It means you're in the arena. You're playing the game. You're taking shots, and sure, not every shot goes in. But the fact that you're shooting at all tells me you're alive, you're engaged, you're hungry, because the only people who never fail are the ones who never try, and that's not living, that's existing. That's hiding from life. Now here's what happens when you start failing forward. At first, it feels brutal. You put yourself out there, you take a risk, you try something new, and you get knocked down. Maybe someone says no to you, maybe the deal falls through. Maybe the idea you thought would change everything blows up in your face, and your mind immediately wants to go to that dark place. See, I knew it wouldn't work. I knew I wasn't good enough. I should have just played it safe, but that's the lie, because in that moment you have a choice. You can fail backward, which means you retreat into safety and stay the same, or you can fail forward, and which means you extract the lesson, adjust your approach, and keep pressing on. When you fail forward, you start to realize something profound. The very things you once thought were mistakes become the building blocks of your mastery. That conversation that didn't go the way you hoped taught you how to communicate better. That business that fell apart taught you how to manage risk. That relationship that broke your heart taught you how to love yourself more deeply and how to set higher standards. Those so-called failures weren't wasted time. They were your training ground. Think about a baby learning to walk. How many times do they fall? Dozens, hundreds. And yet nobody looks at a toddler who stumbles and says, "Well, I guess walking isn't for you. Better stick to crawling the rest of your life." No, we cheer them on, we clap, we encourage, we tell them to try again because we know the falling is part of the learning. But somewhere along the line, we grow up and forget that truth. We start labeling our stumbles as evidence that we're not good enough when in reality, they're just the natural stepping stones towards something greater. The most successful people in the world have simply failed more times than the average person was even willing to try. They've collected more rejections, more losses, embarrassing moments because they were willing to put themselves in the game again and again. And each time they failed forward, they adjusted, they grew, they got sharper, wiser, tougher. That's why they stand where they do now. Because they avoided failure, but because they embraced it. So if right now you feel like you're failing, if it seems like you keep hitting walls, if you've been rejected, ignored, overlooked, or criticized, don't mistake that for the end. Recognize it as proof you're closer to success than you think. Because every failed attempt, every no, every closed door is simply a necessary step on the road to your breakthrough. You're gathering the data. You're collecting the experience. You're building the resilience that will make you unstoppable when the opportunity finally aligns. And let me tell you something, you only need one yes. You can hear 99 nos. It won't matter when you finally get that one yes that changes everything, but you'll never reach it if you stop at 98. Most people give up one try too soon. They let failure convince them to retreat instead of using it as a reason to push harder. That's why so many left their lives unfulfilled. They were right on the edge, but they mistook the sting of failure as a signal to quit. Failing forward also means you're becoming bolder, because every time you fail and survive, you realize failure doesn't kill you, it doesn't define you. It doesn't have the power to end your story unless you let it. That realization gives you courage. Suddenly, you're willing to take bigger risks, chase bigger dreams, because you know, even if you stumble, you'll land stronger than before. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more you fail forward, less you actually fail in the way most people define it. Because you start seeing the game differently. You stop measuring your progress only by the outcome and start measuring it by the growth. Suddenly, setback isn't a setback, it's an upgrade. The rejection isn't rejection, it's redirection. You stop living in fear of failure and you start using it as a tool. So if right now your life feels messy, if it feels like nothing is working, if it feels like every door keeps slamming shut in your face, good. That means you're in the arena. That means you're taking the shots most people don't have the courage to take. That means you're failing forward. Failing forward is the chest proof that success is not only possible for you, it's inevitable as long as you don't quit. Because the ones who make it aren't the ones who never fail, they're the ones who turn every failure into a stepping stone and keep moving forward no matter what. Another powerful sign that you're closer to success than you realize is when your circle starts to change. And I want you to really hear this because it's one of the most overlooked but clearest signals that transformation is happening. In your life, when you're growing, when you're stepping into a higher standard for yourself, the people around you, your friends, your colleagues, even your family, may not all come with you. At first, it feels confusing. People you once clicked with don't feel the same anymore. The conversation that used to excite you now feel shallow. The activities that once felt fun don't satisfy you in the same way. You notice that your tolerance for negativity, gossip, complaining, or playing small is shrinking, and you might even feel guilty about it, like you're leaving people behind. What's really happening is this: your energy is shifting, and your standards are rising, and your life is naturally filtering out what no longer aligns with where you're going. Success has a frequency, and as you start tuning into it, you'll feel when certain connections don't resonate anymore. It doesn't mean those people are bad, and it doesn't mean you don't care for them. It simply means you're evolving. Imagine trying to listen to a new station on the radio while still clinging to the old frequency. It just doesn't work. You can't tune into two channels at once. Growth forces you to retune, and when you do, some voices fade out so new ones can come in. Here's the part nobody warns you about. This shift can feel lonely. It can feel like you're walking away from familiarity and stepping into uncertainty. You start to question, what's wrong with me? Why don't I enjoy the same things anymore? I fit in the way I used to. But instead of seeing that as loss, you need to see it as evolution. That discomfort you feel with your old circle is evidence that you're not the same person you were 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago. You've outgrown certain dynamics, and that's not betrayal. That's progress. Think about a snake shedding its skin. It doesn't do it once. It does it repeatedly over and over because it has to release the old layers to make space for growth. That's exactly what happens when your circle changes. You're shedding old environments, old conversations, old influences, because you're making room for new ones that can support the version of you that's emerging. And here's something powerful. You start raising your standards. You naturally attract people who live at that standard. You start meeting people who inspire you, who challenge you, who don't let you play small. And when you get around people who think bigger, live at a higher level of energy and expectation, something inside of you wakes up. You start to realize, wait, this is possible for me too. This is the new normal I'm stepping into. But here's the catch. You can't make room for those people if you're still clinging desperately to the ones who drain you. Sometimes the greatest act of self-love, the greatest sign you're getting closer to your breakthrough, is recognizing who you can't afford to give your energy to anymore. That doesn't mean you cut people off with bitterness or resentment. It means you bless them, you love them. You stop letting them define your reality because your environment will either elevate you or suffocate you, and you can't afford to stay in environments that keep you trapped at your old level. Now, this doesn't mean every single person in your life will leave. Some people will grow with you, some will rise because your example inspires them, but others won't. And if you're serious about your success, you've got to be okay with that. You've got to stop expecting people who are committed to staying the same to applaud your decision. Change, they won't understand because they're not meant to, and here's the beauty of it. When your circle shifts, it's not just about who leaves, it's about who enters. Think about it. Every new level of your life introduces you to new relationships, new mentors, new collaborators, new friends who see the world like you do. You'll look back years later and realize that the people who made the biggest difference in your life didn't come from your past. They showed up as a result of your growth. And if you hadn't been willing to let go of what no longer fit, you never would have created space for them to arrive. This is why your changing circle is such a powerful sign that you're close to success, because it means you're shifting into alignment with the people and environments that are designed to carry you to your next level. It means the universe, life, whatever you want to call it, is rearranging things around you so that you can step into who you're meant to become. Now, I know this part of the journey isn't easy because it can feel like you're torn between two worlds. The old world where you were comfortable, the new one where you're being stretched. And in that tension, it's tempting to shrink back, to try and fit into your old circle again, to keep the peace and avoid the discomfort. But let me tell you, trying to fit into a version of yourself you've already outgrown is one of the fastest ways to kill your progress. You cannot shrink yourself to make other people comfortable and still expect to grow. So if your circle is changing, don't resist it, embrace it, recognize it for what it is, a sign that success is closer than you think. It's not abandonment, it's alignment. It's life showing you that you're ready for more, that you're ready to surround yourself with people who don't just accept your growth, but demand it. People who push you, people who stretch you, people who remind you that you're capable of so much more than you've been settling for. Maybe the greatest gift you can give yourself right now is permission to let that shift happen, to trust that the right people will leave, the right people will stay, and the right people will enter at the right time. Because when your circle changes, it's not a coincidence. It's a signal that your life is aligning with something greater. You're being prepared for the break that's just ahead. Another undeniable sign that you're closer to success than you realize is when you find yourself unable to settle for average anymore. And I want you to really let that sink in, because there comes a point in life when what used to be good enough just doesn't cut it for you anymore. You can't tolerate mediocrity the way you once did. You can't go through the motions the way you used to. You look around at your habits, your standards, your relationships, and your results. And there's this burning inside of you that says, "This is not who I am meant to be. I know there's more." That's not frustration, that's evolution. That's the inner voice of your higher self waking you up. And the fact that you feel restless, that you can't settle for the old patterns, is one of the clearest signs you are closer to a breakthrough than you've ever been. Because here's the truth, most people don't even reach that point. They get comfortable with average and they stay there for life. They convince themselves it's okay, they rationalize it. They say, well, at least I've got a job. At least I'm not struggling like so and so. At least my life isn't terrible. And so they sink into the numbness of mediocrity. But when you start rejecting average, it means something powerful is shifting inside of you. It means you've tasted enough of what just okay feels like. You've realized it's not satisfying. It's not who you were designed to be. You weren't built for a life of half-hearted effort and half-lived dreams. The moment you stop settling is the moment you start moving towards success. Even if the evidence hasn't shown up yet, think about it. Every great breakthrough in history started with someone who refused to settle, someone who looked at the world, their circumstances, or their own habits and said, "No, this isn't enough. I can do better. I will do better." That refusal to accept mediocrity became the spark for innovation, for creation, for transformation. The same is true for you. The irritation you feel with your current level is not a problem. It's a gift. It's life telling you you're ready for the next level. Now, here's the thing. When you reach that point where you can't settle anymore, can feel uncomfortable because you look around at the life you've built and suddenly it doesn't feel like it fits you. Maybe your job feels like it's suffocating you. Maybe the relationship you've tolerated for years no longer feels aligned. Maybe your habits, sleeping in, procrastinating, scrolling endlessly on your phone, start to disgust you. And you wonder, why can't I be okay with this like I used to? Why does this no longer satisfy me? But instead of seeing that as a crisis, you need to see it as a calling. You've outgrown the level you're on, and that agitation you feel is proof that you're not supposed to stay there. This is the moment where a lot of people give up or shrink back because they misinterpret the discomfort. They think something's wrong with me. Why can't I just be content? But the truth is, it's not that something is wrong. It's that something is waking up inside you. That fire, that dissatisfaction is the energy that's going to propel you forward. Without it, you'd never move. Without that frustration, you'd stay exactly where you are. Think about it like this. A bird that outgrows its cage doesn't stay sitting quietly. It starts pacing, flapping, pressing against the bars, desperate to get out. That discomfort isn't weakness. It's nature, it's growth. And the fact that you can't settle anymore is proof that your cage is too small for the person you're becoming. Here's the paradox. When you stop settling for average, your life often gets harder before it gets easier, because suddenly you're not willing to accept the crumbs anymore. You're not willing to tolerate toxic people, lazy habits, meaningless distractions. You demand more of yourself. You demand more of your time, you demand more of your energy, and at first it feels like everything is being torn apart. But what's really happening is you're upgrading. You're clearing out what no longer serves you to make room for what does. So if right now you find yourself restless, unsatisfied, maybe even frustrated, With where you are, good. That's not a setback. That's the signal that you're alive, that you're awake, that you're stepping into your next chapter. The real danger isn't being frustrated with average. The real danger is being comfortable with it. Because the moment you stop being okay with less, you set the stage for more. This is also why people sometimes understand you when you hit this stage. They'll look at your life and say, "Why aren't you happy? You've got a job. You got a roof over your head. You're doing fine," and they won't get it because they're still content with average. They can't feel what you feel. They don't understand that fine isn't enough for you anymore, and that's okay. They're not supposed to understand because the hunger inside you isn't theirs, it's yours, and that hunger is your compass. It's proof that you're meant for more. It's proof that your spirit is pushing you towards success, because you wouldn't feel this pull if you weren't capable of stepping into a higher level. You wouldn't feel this restless drive if you weren't already close to breaking through. So instead of fighting it, lean into it. Embrace the fact that you can't settle anymore. Stop trying to quiet that inner voice that says you're meant for more. Stop trying to numb it with distractions. That voice isn't your enemy, it's your guide. The fact that it's louder now than it's ever been is the clearest evidence that success is closer than you thought. Because here's the truth: you don't get what you're willing to tolerate, you get what you're committed to. The moment you stop tolerating mediocrity is the moment your life begins to shift. It may not change overnight, but it will change because you've drawn a line in the sand and said, "I refuse to settle. I demand more. I deserve more," will become more, and life always responds to that kind of decision. So if you can feel it in your gut right now, that irritation, that hunger, that unwillingness to accept average, don't see it as a burden. See it as the proof you're closer than you've ever been. Another undeniable sign that you're closer to success than you think is when you begin to notice the small wins stacking up and patterns of progress forming in your life. I want you to really catch this because most people overlook it. They're so focused on the big dramatic breakthrough, the moment where everything changes overnight, that they miss the subtle victories happening right in front of them. Success rarely arrives as a single explosion. It's built one brick at a time, and those small wins, those little signs of progress are the clearest proof that your foundation is being laid for something extraordinary. Think about it. Success is not usually one giant leap. It's a series of steps, and each step is a win, no matter how small it looks. Waking up earlier than you used to, that's progress. Choosing discipline over distraction, that's progress. Saying no to the things you used to say yes to, that's progress. Making a little more money, building a little more confidence, taking one small action you've been avoiding, those are all victories. They may not seem like much in the moment. They're proof you're no longer who you used to be. They're evidence that momentum is building. The problem is most people don't recognize their progress because they're too busy comparing themselves to some ideal version of success. They look at where they want to be, and because they're not there yet, they dismiss the progress they've made as meaningless. But let me tell you something. If you only celebrate the finish line, you'll miss the joy and the growth that comes with every step along the way. And here's the paradox. If you don't appreciate those small wins, you'll lose the fuel that keeps you moving toward the bigger ones. Have you ever gone to the gym after a long break? The first time you work out, you don't see much change. You look in the mirror and wonder if it's even working, but maybe your form gets a little better. Maybe you can lift just a bit more than last week. Maybe you notice you've got a little more energy the next morning. Those are small wins. They're not the transformation you dream of, but they are proof that something is shifting beneath the surface. And if you stay consistent, those small wins stack into massive results. Life works the same way. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you're stacking another win. Every time you get back up after a setback, you're proving to yourself that you're unstoppable. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, no matter how small, you're rewiring your brain to trust you, to believe that you follow through. That's not trivial, that's everything. Because success is built on trust with yourself. That trust is built through the small wins you collect day after day. Maybe you're not where you want to be financially yet, but you've stopped making the same mistakes you used to make with your money. Maybe you're not the fittest version of yourself yet, but you've started walking every day instead of doing nothing. Maybe you're not in your dream career yet, but you're learning skills that are opening doors you couldn't even see before. Those are not accidents. Those are signs that you're moving forward, even if the leap doesn't feel big enough yet. The truth is success leaves clues, and those clues show up in the form of patterns. Look at your life right now. You more consistent than you used to be? Do you handle setbacks better than you did a year ago? Do you think bigger, act bolder, make choices you wouldn't have made in the past? If you can say yes, then you're already on your way. You're not stuck. You're building momentum, and momentum is the invisible force that carries you to levels you never thought possible. But here's the challenge. You have to train your eyes to see it, because your mind will always want to focus on what's missing. It will want to remind you of how far you still have to go, how much you haven't achieved, how many goals are still out of reach. But if you only measure what you don't have, you'll never feel successful. No matter how much progress you make, you'll rob yourself of the fuel that comes from recognizing that you are in fact moving forward. So I want you to pause and ask yourself right now, are the small wins I've overlooked? What habits have I changed? What patterns have I broken? What little victories have I achieved that prove I'm not the same person I used to be? Because when you start stacking those wins in your awareness, you'll realize you're much further along than you thought. And here's the beautiful part. Those small wins compound just like money invested grows with interest. Every small step you take compounds into bigger breakthroughs. You may not see it today, months from now, years from now, you'll look back and realize that the little choices, the ones that seemed insignificant at the time, were the ones that changed everything. The decision to wake up an hour earlier, the choice to read instead of scrolling, the courage to make one uncomfortable phone call, commitment to show up when you didn't feel like it. Those tiny wins stack into unstoppable momentum. That's why recognizing these patterns of progress is so important, because success doesn't just show up one day unannounced. It reveals itself gradually in the form of better decisions, stronger habits, deeper resilience, sharper focus. If you're seeing those patterns in your life right now, even if the results aren't massive yet, it means success is already unfolding. It means you're closer than you think. So if you're sitting there feeling like nothing's working, like you're not making progress fast enough, I want you to challenge that thought. Look again, look closer. You'll see the wins you've been ignoring. You'll see the progress you've been dismissing. When you realize those small wins are evidence that you're moving in the right direction, you'll understand you're not far away, you're not stuck. You're on the path. You're closer to your breakthrough than you've ever been. The final sign that you're closer to success than you think is when you notice that despite the challenges, despite the failures, despite the discomfort, there is still a hunger inside you that refuses to die, even in the moments when you doubt yourself, even in the nights when you're exhausted and questioning everything. There's this unexplainable drive that keeps whispering, "Don't quit. Keep going. You're not done yet." That hunger is not random. It's the ultimate proof that you're right on the edge of something greater. Because let's be honest, if success wasn't close, if you weren't meant for more, you wouldn't still care this much. You wouldn't still be fighting. People who are truly finished stop caring. They check out. They numb themselves. They settle for whatever life gives them and convince themselves it's enough. But if you're listening to me right now, deep down, there's this burning inside of you that refuses to accept the life you have as the final version of your story, then you've got to understand that hunger is sacred. It's life itself pulling you forward. Here's the truth about hunger. It doesn't always feel like motivation. Most of the time it doesn't feel like fireworks or passion or high energy. Sometimes hunger feels like restlessness. Sometimes it feels like frustration. Sometimes it feels like exhaustion followed by a quiet whisper that says, "I can't quit now." Hunger doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just refuses to leave. No matter how many times you get knocked down, no matter how many times you say, "Done," something inside of you still gets back up. That's hunger, and that hunger is your compass. It's proof that your future is calling you louder than your past. It's proof that your purpose is stronger than your pain. You wouldn't have this drive if you weren't built for more. You wouldn't feel this pull if there wasn't something waiting for you on the other side of the struggle. Hunger is the link between who you are now and who you're becoming. When you feel it, you've got to trust it. Now, hunger isn't always glamorous. In fact, sometimes it feels like torture because it never lets you settle. You might achieve something that other people would consider amazing. While you're grateful, something inside of you still says, there's another level. There's more in me. That's not greed. That's growth. That's the natural human drive to expand, to create, to push beyond limitations. When you honor that hunger, when you feed it, instead of suppressing it, you tap into a force that will carry you further than talent, further than luck, further than circumstances ever could. The challenge is that hunger demands sacrifice, it demands discipline, it demands that you keep moving even when you don't feel like it. But here's the beautiful thing, you don't need to feel motivated every day if you're truly hungry. Hunger doesn't rely on emotion. It's deeper than a mood. Hunger is identity, it's who you are. And when you identify with that hunger, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking, do I feel like doing this today? And you start declaring, I do this because this is who I am. That's when everything changes. Think back to the times in your life when you achieved something you once thought was impossible. Was it because everything lined up perfectly? Is it because you felt amazing every step of the way? No. It was because something, and you refused to quit. It was because your hunger was stronger than your excuses, and that same hunger is alive in you right now. It's what's brought you here. It's what keeps you searching, growing, striving, and the fact that you still have it even after all you've been through, even after all the setbacks, is the clearest sign that success is closer than you think. See, hunger will always outlast failure. You can fail a 100 times, but if you're still hungry, you'll rise 101. Hunger will always outlast rejection. People can tell you no over and over, but if you're still hungry, you'll keep finding a way until you hear that yes. Hunger will always outlast comfort, even when you've achieved some level of success. Hunger will pull you to the next level to keep expanding, to keep creating, to keep serving. That's why hunger is the ultimate sign of success. It never lets you settle, but here's the secret. You have to feed it. Hunger can be dulled if you ignore it. If you surround yourself with people who tell you to slow down, if you drown it in distractions and numbing habits. But when you feed it with learning, with action, with courage, with consistency, it grows stronger, and when that hunger grows stronger, it becomes unstoppable, because nothing in the world can stop a person who is truly hungry. Talent can fail, resources can run out, circumstances can crumble, but hunger, that inner fire, will always find a way. So if right now you feel that fire inside of you, even if it's just a flicker, don't ignore it. That sicker is all you need. That's the proof that you're close. That's the signal that you're not done yet. And if you keep feeding that fire, if you keep honoring that hunger, it will turn into an unstoppable blaze that carries you straight into the life you've been working for. Because the people who win, the people who break through, the people who create lives of meaning and abundance, they're not always the smartest. They're not always the most talented. They're not always the luckiest. They're the ones who are hungrier. They're the ones who refuse to quit. They're the ones who keep showing up no matter how many times they get knocked down. If that hunger is alive in you, even after everything you faced, then hear me clearly. You're closer to your success than you